I'm Coach Tarek.
And I'm Vanessa.
We are your movement experts, and we are here to educate health and fitness professionals with the tools to create real change for and within the industry. Hey, it's your co-host, Tarek. I had an amazing conversation with Graham Harper from Lumaflex. He's a former rugby, CrossFitter, as well as boxer who sustained numerous injuries, as you'd imagine with those impact sports. And he stumbled across the red light, infrared light therapy. And it was his epiphany for his personal journey of healing to then kind of go, how can this red light therapy be accessible to many? To that effect, he created an awesome product called Lumaflex. However, we dive into what is the science behind red light, infrared therapy, how this can be scalable and reach to everyone, not just for professional athletes, for example, but how this can be incorporated as a daily habit that is of necessity for one's well-being. Sit back and enjoy this amazing chat. Check out FTI's latest offer, which is 15% off of any of our online courses. Simply go to www.functionaltraininginstitute.com and input PDM15 at cart checkout. An amazing guest today, Graham Harper from Lumaflex. Very keen to hear what John's story is about. So, John, how are you doing today, mate?
Very good. Yeah, I just want to say what a great title for a podcast, The Purpose-Driven Movement. Really sets the right tone. I like that.
Thank you. And yeah, you're in a different part of the world. Where are you at the moment?
Well, right now I am in Shenzhen, China. So all our manufacturing is done here in this area. It's about, say, an hour away from Hong Kong. And pretty much anything with a chip inside it is built in this area of the world. But yeah, I'm here sort of overseeing production of Lumaflex and potentially looking at new products to prototype and launch before the end of the year. So yeah, it's exciting.
Indeed, it sounds all very exciting, and that sort of launches us into today's topic, which is red light therapy for optimal performance and recovery. So quite loaded. We will be focusing on how the product, achieves those outcomes, the optimal performance and recovery. Before we do, I want to launch into having read your bio and did some research and having met you, of course, over in Beyond Active event in Singapore. I was quite intrigued as I was reading through the research, your history, and in particular, your story and the whole concept of your red light epiphany. So would you like to share how this sort of all started for you and what sparked it?
Yeah, I guess where it began was me as a skinny, unconfident, pale-looking, red hair. I was a young little kid looking to get confidence. I found that confidence in the gym, building muscle on the body, which is like building armor to protect that inside teddy bear, you could say. But yeah, I got into fitness. I loved the feedback that I got from training and getting confident that I wanted to share this with other people. So I went into personal training. I went into opening gyms. But throughout that whole time, I wanted to be someone that really practiced what they preached, So I stayed competitive. And my first love in terms of sports was rugby. And I was playing quite well, but as we all know, rugby is a game that I think just if you're looking the wrong way or at a split second, injury can occur, especially when you're sort of climbing to at least a semi-pro level. But yeah, I remember the first tour we did, I went in for a tackle and I just had the wrong angle. And I think I was overconfident. I remember telling the guy, I remember chirping at him a little bit, like, I'm going to come get you kind of thing. And I guess the universe didn't like that attitude. So I slammed into this guy and popped my shoulder. And I had like a little micro tear on the bone. I remember it was a pretty serious injury. I had to go to hospital, did the whole recovery thing. We took about a couple of months, 6 to 7 months for rehab. But then going back out on the field, because I was nursing this shoulder, I was very aggressive with the other shoulder, which meant that shoulder actually popped as well. So I kind of thought, okay, no more rugby for me. Let's leave that alone. Try something else, that's safer. I went into CrossFit and I remember doing a lot of, CrossFit, they have the Olympic lifts. It's a key component of the whole sort of system that they do. It's a snatch, it's a clean jerk, all of that. that. I remember doing a clean and then jerking. And when you have your weightlifting shoes and you sort of have to impact the ground to jerk the bar above your head. I remember doing that with my knee, my left knee, and I felt like a little pinch, which I just ignored and I thought it was okay. But then it just got worse and worse and my knee ended up getting quite damaged. So then going after rugby, went to CrossFit. Then after CrossFit, I went into boxing. Boxing, I think, was actually safer out of all of those sports because it's really just you and one person across the ring. You can kind of there's an element of control there. You can kind of control the danger, so to speak. Whereas with rugby, people can come from any sides. And with CrossFit, you get very aggressive when you're competing. That form can kind of just go outside the window, right? Because you're watching times and you're watching the other competitors and you can kind of get too aggressive and then make that wrong jerk like I did and suffer for it. But after boxing for quite a number of years, I started to get headaches in the back of my head. This area right here felt like somebody was pushing their finger into my head. So going into the hospital and getting a scan, they found a tumor that had developed in my brain. It was about the size of my thumb. It was about that big. And they said it was because of micro traumas. Because they asked me, they said, "Oh, did you have a serious car accident when you were young? Did you have a fall? Or did you have where would this impact be coming from?" So I said, I'm doing boxing a lot. And they said, "Yeah, don't do that. No more impact sports." So I quit all of the sports and I went into bodybuilding for a little bit. I enjoyed some competitions there, but there was no real rivalry. So I sort of lost interest in that. But now I just focus on the business. But throughout that whole time in doing all these sports, I discovered red light therapy. It was actually introduced to me by my wife. Well, she's my wife now, but back then, we were dating. And it was a lamp that she introduced me to. It was like this tall lamp that, goes on the side of your bed. And this lamp, actually, many people have sent me photos of this same lamp used in many different, it's actually used quite a lot in hospitals. It doesn't look very pretty. It has a large red bulb and it does red and infrared light. The bulb gets very hot. So, when she first told me to use it, and she said, put it on the area, target it on that area and do 20 minutes before bed. And I thought it was, because she's Chinese. I thought, this is some special Chinese medicine thing. I'll just do it just to make her happy. But I didn't have much faith in it. And I always thought that the heat was actually what was healing me. I really didn't understand the light part at that time. It was like 6-7 years ago. And I remember after about a week, I didn't have the pain anymore. I remember my knee would get so inflamed that even in a seated position, I wouldn't be able to sit down without it really hurting. So noticing that I was able to sit down after a few days of doing this treatment, I was curious as to, wow, this seems like it's, at least it's helping me, sit in a 90 degree, because that's where it would really hurt. I remember my knee especially. I couldn't take a taxi, couldn't take an airplane without having to get up and stretch my knee. And I would carry this deep heat rub with me and I would massage my joints to try to get the circulation going. So after about a week, I didn't have that pain. And then after about 2 weeks, I didn't need to use it anymore. I stopped using the lamp. But I got me very interested as to what that was actually healing me. Was it the heat or the light? And of course, learning and now, going deep into light therapy and understanding what light therapy is kind of resulted in where we are today with Lumaflex, and it's a device that is far more suited to an individual like me rather than this cumbersome lamp that, had to be by my bed or by my desk. So I wanted to create a device that was, sort of seamless to use, that was very, accessible, portable. So I kind of got, after doing lots of research into what light therapy was, and I've obviously been part of a community of photobiomodulation scientists and people that have started brands. It's been rewarding because you learn a lot about, not just about what it can do in terms of pain, but also potentially curing, very, very prominent diseases like cancer, right? Like there's research now coming in, or brain diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. So it's been a rewarding experience, but that's kind of how it came to be. Looking back at those competitive years, I was very much a yes man and I was just throwing myself into competitions. I wasn't focused on recovery, as I'm sure, you discussed with your community, the importance of turning the gas on, but also stopping the car and actually focusing on recovery. That's something in my years now that I appreciate. And I want to sort of say that message to the younger athlete like I was back in the day to
incredible, like that competitiveness and maybe confidence and so on can serve us well, in certain phases of our professional life in particular. Yeah, but it's learning to sort of switch on and off, as you say, to kind of switch into another mode, which is this concept of recovery and sort of understanding the importance of healing and restoration. Now, that said, which is very insightful, so thank you for sharing your story, because I think without a story, there's no passion behind it. And having met you and talked to you several times, you're very passionate, and that sort of comes out in your pursuit of bettering yourself around and bettering the product and it evolving. Before we dive into the product itself, can we discuss sort of what red light therapy is, maybe the contrast between that and infrared, just so the listeners can kind of have a little bit of a concept from your perspective?
Yeah, it's amazing where light therapy has come in these recent years because, 40 years ago, people that were worshiping the sun, that were talking about light therapy, they were considered like hippies and they were sort of shunned and cast aside, you could say. Whereas now they're becoming these almost like figureheads, these public figures, and everything they say is worshipped and like everyone's doing it. It's amazing how it's come this far. But when I was learning about light therapy and when I would speak to lots of different scientists, and some have a very strong science background, so I'd always ask them, I'd be like, can you package this information to where people won't disassociate with it because it's like, oh, it's too complex, it's too sciencey, it's not for me. Like, talk to me as if we were talking to an athlete, like somebody who needs, I don't want to say convincing, but just someone who wants to you sell me on it. And I remember one scientist in particular, the way that he described it to me, I really liked it. And I usually sort of regurgitate the way he explained it to me. So what is light therapy? Light therapy is from the sun, and red and infrared light, the optimal time to get this from the sun is at sunrise and sunset. Red and infrared light is available to us throughout the entire day, but the best time to get it is when it's that golden hour. They call it the golden hour. In Thailand, you can see, or even in Miami, like when I'm in Miami, I see the most beautiful sunrises and sunsets. And that is red and infrared light. And that's when the light is at the right wavelength to be able to penetrate your skin and activate your mitochondria. So your body is made up of cells. Everyone knows, like this is your basic science class in primary school. And the mitochondria is the driver, the engine, the powerhouse of the cell. And by giving energy to the mitochondria, the cell can now do what it's supposed to do. So the light doesn't heal you. The light doesn't bring about the outcome. It gives your mitochondria, your cells, energy to do what they're supposed to do. So when, for example, talking about, hair growth, using light therapy for hair growth, it's not growing your hair, it's giving your cells the ability to grow the hair. When it's talking about collagen production for the beauty masks that you see on TikTok, it's not making your skin beautiful, it's giving your cells the energy to be able to produce collagen, right? For your pain, for your shoulder, doing light therapy on, a sore shoulder. It's not healing your shoulder, it's giving your cells the excess energy to be able to heal themselves. So red and infrared light, red, it's all down to the depths that it goes into your body. So red light, you're looking at about 600 to 700 nanometers is the distance, maybe an inch into your body. This is where we get a lot of surface outcomes. Like, boxing, you finish sparring and sometimes you get a little bit bruised up, right? Especially in your mouth there. If someone hits you, it's like you're tasting, you have that pinch in your teeth, or you're a bit bruised or you have a cut. That's surface level conditions. That's for red light. And deeper conditions, infrared light can go up to 4 inches into your body. So when you're looking at a device for use for yourself, you're looking at a device that has red light and infrared light to address surface and then deeper conditions inside the body. So for Lumaflex, we've got 630 nanometers for red light, and we've got 850 nanometers for infrared light. So 850, this nanometer, this is where we can address pain like deep chronic pain, sciatica, arthritis, neuromuscular pain. So that's sort of when I remember talking to, we're still very, very close friends. This scientist of mine, the way he explained it to me, it was how it resonated with me many years ago. I felt like this is a good way to explain it to people in fitness, because fitness, at least in my experience, fitness is all about, it's that David Goggins mentality, right? Stay hard, no pain, no gain. And I'm not saying it's bad. Definitely, it contributes to some mental resilience, there's a mental benefit to it, right? Especially if you're competing. But there's not much emphasis on recovery, on deloading, on preparing and conditioning the body in that respect for competition in the future. So I'm always thinking, how can I better explain light therapy to people in fitness so that they really understand it, appreciate it, and see the value of it. And then they can help grow the awareness of it to the fitness community as a whole. So I'm always aware of that. If you yourself or if anyone listening has some ideas of how I could better do this is sort of my big mountain to climb, is growing light therapy in the fitness community.
You're achieving that through this awareness, whether it's podcasting or blogging, because as I was reading through your product catalog, one thing that struck out to me is that the product's for everyone. And I think that's of particular importance because it can be applied in professional athletic realms, let's say, right down to someone recovering from a trauma of sorts, right? And anyone else in between. So I think that's something that really stands out along with the portability of your product. One question I do have is, when would you use, is there some sort of guidance that you offer, either red light or infrared, like just the prescription sort of elements between those two spectrums?
I don't see many devices now that have either one or the other. Usually they have both. Remember, infrared light, we can't actually see it. So like I have the app of Lumaflex, right? So if I connect the Body Pro to the app, I can custom it to where I don't use red light. I just use infrared light. So I'm just focusing on deep conditions in the body, right? Maybe if I feel like something is wrong with my lower back, my bone, sort of joints, these sort of areas. But when you look at the device, it looks like this. It doesn't look like it's on. But red light is obviously what we see. So it's a dual chip. So this LED chip has both red and infrared light. But I don't see many use cases where you wouldn't apply both in terms of pain. Even for beauty, I see a lot of devices now that for masks, I do see they also have a nanometer, infrared nanometer. Maybe it doesn't go like in 900 or that deep. Maybe it's still like 810 or 790. It's more in those ranges. But still, I think there's benefit to having both, for at least for all the conditions that I can think of. I wouldn't just pick one.
Gotcha. And then my other question is, people have busy lives and so on. What's the optimal time of usage? So would it be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or is it sort of case dependent in your experience?
So they've done some clinical research to show what is the amount of light that a human body can uptake and in a sense be like, imagine if you have a battery. Every human being has a battery inside them. So you have your full battery, you fill it to the top, and it's around 20 minutes. After 20 minutes of a full body red light treatment, like if you're on a bed or you're standing in front of a large panel, or if you're in one of those like tanning beds that has like the top that completely cover you, after about 20 minutes, the body doesn't necessarily get more benefit. You flatline a little bit. And that's sort of generally speaking for everyone. But everybody's battery depletes at different times. If somebody who's dealing with cancer versus somebody who's dealing from, stress because he's lost his job, or someone's dealing with, he's been hit in the mouth from boxing, or somebody who has like arthritis on their shoulder, everybody's battery will deplete at different times. And usually if you're more healthy, your battery doesn't drop as fast. If someone's more sedentary, they smoke, they drink, they don't exercise much, they have trouble sleeping, usually their battery can drop quite quickly because you filled up your battery and now your body's trying to use this energy, using this cellular energy for a lot of different issues that you have. So I would say, depending on the person, you would need multiple full doses per day. And that's talking about a large device, right? With a device like the Lumaflex, it's very localized. So the batteries that I have in the device, it has a 10-minute timer. So we do recommend 10-minute treatments for localized areas. And I would encourage doing up to 4 times a day. So 40 minutes total on an area. Like say you've got a bad shoulder, do up to 44 times a day and do it for like 2 weeks or up to a month to address that pain and look to find complete relief. Like whenever someone's asking like, oh, I have pain, how do I deal with pain? I always say, okay, number one, you need the device to touch your body. It has to touch your skin. You have to get the device inside your clothing. Number two, you need like consistent time every day, right? So 40 minutes is what I would say. Sometimes other doctors can say more. Like you got photobiomodulation doctors who usually like to get people to almost overdose on light therapy, but you can't overdose, not to worry. And also, invest the time like 2 weeks to a month. I remember having a talk with quite a prominent doctor. I think it was in Dallas. I think it was at the biohacking conference in Dallas. And he said he never prescribes less than a month for pain. A month of daily use, 20 to 40 minutes a day for a month. And then, he says, come back and let's assess your pain rating. But long story short, everybody's different, right? That's the greatest thing about humans. Humans' greatest resources are differences, but it also means you can't give one prescription for everyone. Everybody's different. And if you have pain, you should use a lot more for overall well-being, just to get your light vitamins. I like to say, I would do 10 minutes on the forehead in the morning. I do 10 minutes on my spine. I put the Lumaflex on the up part of my neck, 10 minutes on the heart, and then 10 minutes on the gut. That's what I do every morning. And then throughout the day, if I'm in front of the computer, I've got lots of work to do, and I sort of, I'm being hit by artificial light, by blue light a lot, getting quite stressed, maybe, getting a little bit drained. I'll do that again. I see light as like, a pick-me-up. It's like a vitamin that I access throughout the day just to help, for my overall well-being. So I do take in light a lot throughout the day. And I encourage everyone to do the same. You'd be amazed at how good you feel just by getting quality light in every day.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, to check in here, obviously guidelines are useful. So about if we go back to just getting sunlight, like you said earlier, sunrise, sunset, and certainly, environment depending, right? Like I'm based in Thailand, we get consistent sunlight, but different parts of the world, you may be deprived in certain seasons, in Northern Europe, for example. So it's interesting, like looking at the environmental components of this. That's one thing to kind of consider, folks. So 20 minutes, I'm a little inconsistent in that, right? Like I think either I do it early in the morning, or for me, it's much more accessible. I hop up on the roof just above my office here, and I can just, soak up that vital sunlight from the sunset. And then your device, what's really groovy about it is that, you could strap it in your forehead and you could still theoretically meditate or breathe or do some form of stretching. You don't need to be posited in a certain place, right? And I think that's a real hallmark of a great product that is accessible and you can use it anywhere. So I wanted to kind of point that out and probably get some confirmation from you in that, do you advise whether you strap it on your head or another localized part of the body that you can still read, write, or would you just say do nothing and focus purely on that 10 minutes of healing? What's your perspective on that?
No, absolutely. I mean, I have people that use it in between rounds of, like when they're playing golf. I have ladies that use it as they're, taking their kids to school or picking their kids up to take them to soccer practice. I think, the idea with Lumaflex is easily accessible, on the go use anytime, anywhere. I never really, each to their own, but when someone says, stop, do this, then resume your life, I don't do that. I never do that. I'm an on the go person. I brush my teeth as I'm doing, 7 different other things, and I'm not one of those people that just sort of like cuts something and devotes the time. Of course, I do believe in breath work, meditation, like finding times in the day to work on your mental health. Yes, and definitely something that I'm bringing to the app is like guided meditation and guided breath work, an ice bath with Lumaflex, so that sort of obviously can take a good 10-minute chunk out of your day. But I'm always encouraging people to use it on the go as they do things. Yeah, that's the whole vision of Lumaflex.
Yeah, it's wonderful, the vision and the unfolding, of course. It's a product that's ready. But I like the idea of this sort of tactical habit formulation, and I think that's really critical, is mapping out, and perhaps the app can evolve to have some form of tactical habit formulation, because whether it's a reminder, of course, or, it's all that little education piece that I'm wanting to touch on here, given that's what Functional Training Institute's about, for example, and folk on this podcast who come and listen are, from around the world, over 55 countries and, all walks of life. So in terms of that side of it, what would you kind of consider around the education? Are you focusing in on that for the consumer, or is it for the professional? Just to dive into that a little bit, John.
Yeah. Well, I have a guy that is a great light scientist that has taken that role of, I guess I've titled him as, Director of Training and Education for Lumaflex, and he's building a whole foundational course, and that is actually set to launch next Monday. Wow, it's actually quite soon. Very, very soon. The goal of that is to be able to give, trainers, give people in sport, and anybody who purchases the device, we want to give them this education too, so they understand about obviously the mechanisms of light therapy, increased ATP, increased blood circulation, and anti-inflammation, the mechanisms, cellular mechanisms that happen when you expose your body to light therapy. But then also very important is what testimonials of people that have used light therapy and they found relief or they found healing. Because if someone has a condition, if someone says, says, I have this condition. How should I use red light therapy? What everyone does really in light therapy is we just tell people, like, it doesn't hurt to try it. You have to try it. I can't tell you exactly when you're going to find relief. All I can do is show the clinical research, and I can show you testimonials of people that are in similar conditions. So that's sort of what the education is about, is understanding the clinical research, all the studies, that side of it, performance, for recovery, and also as well as performance boosting as well. Like there's a study I really like where it talks about red light therapy in competitive sports, about it can actually increase your body's cellular energy so much that it needs to be understood in the same sense as taking steroids. It is an enhancer. It can improve your athletic performance in competitive sports. So it needs to be sort of regulated and widely accepted that Team A and Team B both need to use it, because there's a lot of discussion about red light therapy for when it comes to recovery, pain management, and all of this, but there's just as much research to show that it actually boosts performance. It actually can support performance enhancement. That's very exciting. So this is all something that needs to be outlined inside the foundational course to where people know about this, they can understand, and they can endorse it. But really, when it comes to prescriptions for different conditions in the whole photobiomodulation community, our greatest sort of endorsement for light therapy is the fact that people have used it and have found relief. So we always refer to those case studies. Yeah, that's coming actually very, very soon. Monday, I believe, is when I launch it. And I'm going to be sending it to you to have a look at.
I'm very intrigued to have a look at it, John. And yeah, no, this really shows the authenticity, I suppose, of not just simply a device, but the education, and as well as the clinical and anecdotal, right? Like we can't mess about with good anecdotal evidence because that's just critical mass, right? And plus the community element will help. And as I was flicking through your clinical research, I really liked how you've analyzed it. So I thought it best that in the show notes for the listeners, you'll have links to check out the research, read more up about the product itself, and also a lucrative discount as well to find out more about it. That'll all be in the show notes. And let's flip now to any sort of obstacles that you may be encountering or, you've projected as needing to be overcome in terms of, let's say, scalability, uptake, usage. Did you want to share any of those that you're kind of mindful of and perhaps working on overcoming?
The biggest obstacle that we have in light therapy and launching a product is obviously the education. So you have guys like Andrew Huberman, Gary Brecka, Ben Greenfield. They all have very prominent backgrounds. They endorse light therapy, and that's good. That's great support. But usually, do you know the massage gun, right? It's massage therapy, Theragun. Yeah. When you use that, say, for example, if you have a sore shoulder and you use a massage, there's a very strong mental click. Wow, that feels great. Oh, that feels so good. Even if it's a temporary solution to a pain, the brain understands it very, very well. But for light therapy, it's not like that. If someone has a sore shoulder or has a condition and the device is applied to their body, they're not going to go, wow, that feels amazing. Oh my God. And this is a very key thing that helps, treatments or even any kind of product grow, is this instant, gratification, this instant feedback. Whereas light therapy, it's more about using different angles to build trust in the treatment. Like I said, with guys like Andrew Huberman and Gary Brecka, these personalities, they offer some good foundational trust. Then there's a lot of clinical research that is supported. There's a lot of stamps of approval on product packaging or on the product itself or on the company, FDA, these health certificates or lifespan certificate that I've got, or, best invention by Time Magazine. This all really helps to support it. And then the messaging we try, to put out is that it's natural, it's non-invasive. What are your options? You're looking at going on a prescription to deal with your pain, or perhaps even surgery. Why not try something that is natural? It's non-invasive. You can't overdose on it. Maybe try this first, and then you can look to those other solutions for your pain. So that the approach is a little bit different, but that's sort of the biggest obstacle that we are all facing in photobiomodulation, is educating the masses enough and having enough case studies to where people, when they buy it, they invest the time into it. They invest the the time back. Like for hair growth is a tough one. Like I've seen a lot of these hair devices that help grow your hair. It's like a helmet you put on your head, right? And what they say is like, oh, you'll see results in like 3 months. And it's like 3 months, really? Like for males, if we're trying to do things that support testosterone, we're doing, like we're exercising, we're sleeping, we're doing all that we can to support testosterone production, we're going to lose hair. It's just part, like everyone who has high testosterone has little hair. They have hair on your chest, high testosterone, no, not much hair on your, like you.
Well, that's I pointed out, my brothers keep telling me, just shave it off, what little you have. So I'm hanging on.
Yeah, you have high testosterone. And so you're always going to be fighting this losing battle. It's like, it's going to take a year. Like if you're looking at a male with high to average testosterone, when they're using a light therapy bars, it takes a year to see any kind of physical change. So light therapy is like a long-term thing. And that's something that, it can be a big obstacle to growing the brand, growing the awareness. But then again, there's always those times when, someone, usually it's to do with the brain, someone's brain, they have a condition in their head and they've done like a treatment 10 minutes and they're like, wow, they notice something different. And there are those sort of niche cases where someone's had miraculous change in such a short period of time of treatment. But that's the main obstacle for all of us.
And that's hard to measure, right? That could be some other, that's so many variables to quick healing. But this sounds like obviously a gradual process versus a sudden, which means the sort of prophylaxis, let's say with a Theragun or massage or any of that evasive kind of treatment. It's often you can feel okay, but if it's done inconsistently, you're not going to have the benefits over a longer period of time. And I think that's where the education coupled with using the app, I imagine, to monitor, one's healing or at least a feedback to kind of go on a day-to-day basis. What's this sort of gradual feedback they may sense a little bit after a first day? It could be a week. Is there some feedback that you've built in that sort of offers the healing properties, whether it be a certain part of the body? Because I think that would be an important component there.
Yeah, I always tell people it's about 2 weeks of using red light therapy consistently. It's like, when you drink coffee, you're a coffee drinker. You wake up in the morning, you have your eggs, you have your coffee. This is sort of like a thing that I'm not saying it's like you have to have your coffee or you have to have your eggs for breakfast, but it's a natural thing that what happens is when you don't have coffee, you notice it. That feeling where you're like, oh, I didn't have a coffee today. You feel it. It's like that with light therapy. After about 2 weeks of regular use, you notice a day when you don't use it. Your body likes it. It starts to almost like crave it. It reminds you like, oh, grab the panel, put it in, that I've noticed with many people they've told me. I've noticed that with myself. And then it's around 2 to 3 weeks, your body gets, in a sense, addicted to it. That's something that, so it takes about that much time to get accustomed.
So it becomes quite attuned, and our innate intelligence will just pick up on that. And there's a craving that's formed. But I think you're right, that habit formation, minimum of usually 3 months, if not longer. But I think that's where the guidance, it sounds, again, with education, instructors, guidance, will help that user who has really maybe minimal access to, let's say, a personal trainer or some professional, mental health care professional to kind of help guide them and keep them accountable. So obviously that accountability aspect is always a bit of a challenge, whether it be this product or adhering to a fitness program, for example. There's no difference in this as well, but the prescription elements, as you would with a normal programming, sound like they're very basic. Obviously, it needs to be focused in on that area that needs addressing, which would require a sports physio or even a high-level trainer to kind of identify and say, hey, we need to address this along with our kind of other training components. So I think it's great how you've positioned this to not be a standalone wellness or recovery tool. You've alluded to natural sunlight, where possible to get it. But this also just functions throughout the day. As you said, this daily dosage that becomes so important to one's health. And it sounds like a key spoke to the health, as the saying would go. And is there anything else that you wanted to share? Any other insights that you think could be valuable that you haven't already to the listeners?
Yeah, usually I say, like, obviously, if you want to reach out to me at John Graham Fitness, my Instagram, that's usually where I'm most active and responding to inquiries, because we have a lot of athletes that endorse Lumaflex and they prefer IG as their means of communication. So feel free to reach out and also ask. I've got a great database of clinical research, which is always being updated. I've got, like, also within the company, we're collecting our own sort of database of clinical research. So I love sharing clinical studies. It's like the best coffee morning, read that you can do is like, wow, look what it's doing now. Look at this latest research it's doing for the brain or for real terminal illnesses, right? So feel free to reach out. We can exchange studies I can share. But then also what I would encourage anyone to do if they're just, sort of dabbing their toes into light therapy, they're still fiddling around with the idea, like, is this pseudoscience? Does this, what's this all about? Why is this all the craze now? I would just go to YouTube. Don't even go to Google, have a bit more fun. Go to YouTube and just watch like 3 videos. I tell everyone, just go with 3 videos. Let's see whatever those 3 videos are, take it from there and, see if you want to go down the rabbit hole, get on the light train, as I say. But it's a good way to get started.
The light train, that's terrific. Yeah, we'll add your social media handles in the show notes and obviously the website link and how they can purchase the product. And I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it when you're next in Thailand and diving into some strategy with you for sure, John. And one question, the consistent question that we normally ask on this podcast to our special guests like you is, if there's one thing that you'd sort of change, let's say, in the health, fitness, wellness industry, what would that be?
Yeah, it would definitely be changing the medical world in the US. Being in the US, based in Miami, like when you turn on the TV, people like us, we're very much informed. We know what's right, what's wrong. But you see the garbage that's on America with these infomercials where they're, pushing pills so much. You're like, what? Why is this still happening? There's so much talk about big pharma. There's movies. What's that one with Chris Evans, the Pain Hustle, Pain Hustlers? There's so much of it. Why is it still going on? And it still goes on. That would be the big thing I would change, is like, there's so much pushing of pills these days that it almost feels like you're watching a crime. Like you watch an infomercial and you feel like, oh, I just watched something that's illegal. Obviously, we are informed and we know what's better. We push natural, non-invasive means of treatment. We treat the body as a whole, and it's our job to, use correct messaging, use correct packaging of information to be able to inform those people that are sitting on the couch, that are like, oh, wow, that looks like a great pain drug. Let me buy that. We have to, that's what we're up against. And that would be the big thing I hope we can all, as a collective, can change, in the coming years.
Yeah, that resonates with me, and I'm sure with the listeners as well, John. Thank you for sharing your insights on this podcast, and surely we'll have you back at some future point, and look forward to hearing about the evolution of the product. As it stands, it's great, as well as the education component. So those listeners out there, remember to check the show notes, and therefore you can reach out to John through social media and share the science and the progress with the product, as well as a special offer. We offer 10% off for our listeners only, so check out how you could take advantage of that amazing product. John, all the best for you, and we'll be in touch. Thank you once again.
Thank you. We'll see you soon in Thailand.
Thank you for being a part of our podcast community. We work hard to create content that we hope you enjoy and find valuable. If you haven't already, we would be honored if you would consider subscribing and following us on your favorite platform. That way you'll never miss an episode, and you'll always be the first to know when new episodes are released. We truly appreciate your support, and we can't wait to continue to grow and connect with you through our podcast.